Hi, Homeworthy. Welcome back to my home in Newport Beach, California. Come on in and see what I've done this year for Halloween. So as you can see, we have just a few Halloween greeters by the front door. Come on in. Our first stop is the formal entry, and in this space, I wanted it to announce the holiday in a more elegant, dramatic way. As you can see, I've used a lot of candles, including my favorite spooky pillar candles. At the back is my wired tree with little paper lanterns and eerie ornaments. To mix things up this year, I added a few playful touches, like my silly skeletons and a wine bucket repurposed as a vase. After 30 years, I have lots of Halloween decorations, but I always find a few special new things to add to the mix. This year, I added a faux orchid that has eyes to really creep us out. And another addition this year is these oversized cloches filled with branches, twinkle lights, and a few sneaky critters that are actually very easy to make. And in another episode, I'll show you just how to put your own together. So our formal dining room seemed to be the perfect setting for our spooky Halloween dinner party because of its antique chandelier and antique candelabras and vintage books. So it set the perfect backdrop for my spooky dinner setting. So the starting point and the inspiration here was snakes. So I've got different snakes all around the table crawling around. I've got little gold guys, and then I've got guys that are all the way like crawling through my floral arrangements, which makes them super creepy, I think. In addition, we've got candles everywhere, and obviously our witches' cauldrons throughout, adding a whole lot of atmosphere and spookiness to our table setting. Our table dinnerware is kind of normal dinnerware with little spider plates on top. We've got napkins tied with velvet ribbon, and of course we've got little tombstone markers at each place setting, and poison boxes in our candles and poison candy boxes at each place setting. The last little detail that I'd like to share with you is that each place setting also has a coffin marked with the individual guest's initials on it, and inside the little coffin are eyeballs and a little skull, and of course a note that says why I'm so happy that the person is alive and here at our dinner party. So as we head into the kitchen and the family private areas of the house, we've got our center table set up to announce that it's Halloween, of course, but I also needed to make it a little bit simpler this year because I'm hoping you all come back for Thanksgiving. So it's just a few weeks and we're going to need to change this out. And so we needed to keep it a little bit simpler this year. So we started with our faux bois vase or planter here, and with our tree branches, which are all decorated for Halloween, but then you'll see it as it transitions into later in the fall and transitions to Thanksgiving. So in this case, we started with our branches and we wanted to do something a little bit different this year, and so we've got owls kind of flying about our space in several locations, and then as well on our branches. So we've got our little accordion bats, and then we've got our little replicas of vintage candy holders that are also bats in several places. And then of course, lots of little vintage paper craft or reproduction paper crafts. Some are by one of our favorites, Bethany Lowe, who makes these little lovely, delicate items that are scattered about. We've got little spiders on glistening webs, and then of course a lot of little felt felt ghosts flying about. So all kind of fun and various Halloween ornaments in our branches. And this is an easy thing that we've just assembled from branches and put in a pot. So it's something that is quite simple that anyone can do and decorate almost like it's a tree. So beyond our centerpiece, we've got the rest of the space filled with real pumpkins. And these you'll also see transition into Thanksgiving, and as well as fresh flowers and, of course, candles throughout, all announcing it's Halloween and we are ready to have a party. Since we'll be back in just a couple weeks for Thanksgiving, I wanted to keep things simple this year. So I started with a very simple black and brown palette, and in this case used one vintage cologne jar, and the rest are all reproductions. And then we filled them with a variety of dried material in browns and blacks and metallics. And to add our Halloween festivity, we've got our flying bats, wicker bats up above. For our kitchen and dining space, we started with these ghostly plates as our inspiration. As a designer, I always recommend beginning with one or two pieces that set the tone for the rest of your table decor plan. In this case, we took it a step further with a fun twist. Instead of using a traditional tablecloth, I rolled a glittery wrapping paper down the center of the table as a runner. For the centerpiece, I wanted something with a little more drama, so I spray painted gray plastic candelabras black to give them depth and weight. Once again, I added a variety of flowers, including zinnias, tucked into small candle holders for a whimsical touch of color. And of course, no table of mine is complete without a few playful details. We have glittery treat bags and tiny, scary cat baskets from one of my favorite brands, Bethany Lowe. So as you can see, we are all set for a haunted yet charming Halloween table, complete with a little magic and plenty of flying bats. As you can see, in this part of the kitchen, we tried to keep things very simple. We wanted things to feel nice and light and bright, and so I removed my floral slipcovers and some of my floral pillows so that I basically had a white blank palette and was able to add these accents of orange and white, making it feel just like Halloween. On either end, I've got my little hat boxes that were handmade by Rick Connect, and they're just sort of super fun and silly faces of pumpkins on one side, and then on the other side, they're little upright pumpkin faces or skeleton faces. So these are things that I've collected that are handmade and I've collected over the last 20 years, and they just bring me such joy every year when I bring them out. Our outside cabana is set up for a girls' Halloween party. So as you can see, I started with this fun Halloween print, and this is actually a bed sheet that I used, and it's placed upon a second bed sheet. This is one of my little design tricks when I can't find just the right tablecloth. So this set the scene for our girly feminine party. And in addition, I did a chandelier with a skirt that is extra feminine and a paper chain made of all the different sort of patterns and prints that might work with our orange and pink ensemble here. For our table setting, I used my regular Hudson Grace dinnerware and added just a fun little accent plate that made things look more Halloweenish around the table. For our centerpiece, we've got different dahlias and mums and a mixture of fun colors that work with our color palette, and I added pennants to the flowers as well as to our cake to make them feel especially celebratory. And then, of course, I always have my table topped with treats. So I've got my little witch shoes filled with all kinds of little chocolates. To make sure that my friends all had a place to park their brooms when they came to visit, I moved my hall tree right here to the entry of the cabana, so everyone would be set to place their brooms. Hi, welcome to my craft room. Today I'm going to show you how to make several different crafts that you saw throughout our Halloween video. So we're going to start with this very simple bespoke paper chain. And this is something that you can make as long as you like in whatever colors you like. And it's very simple to do. Most of you probably did a similar craft in grade school, but I'm going to show you how to make it just a little more couture. This will kind of add some personality and detail to your holiday setting. So most paper, as you know, craft paper comes in a 12 by 12 size. And because I like to use the tiny little paper cutters to do my project, I just think they're easier, a little more mobile. I start by cutting down my paper in a size that works a little bit better for my tiny paper crafter. So for this project, and I should have told you this to begin with, really all you need is a stapler, a ruler, a straight edge, maybe a cutting board, your decorative papers, and of course you want to choose papers that coordinate with whatever festivity you're planning. So in our case, as you saw, we were doing a girls' party, and so we started with the inspiration of this super fun Halloween fabric. So of course I'm going to choose colors that coordinate, and that's why all of my chain looks so beautiful with and accents perfectly my fabric and the point of reference for our holiday decoration, our girls' night in this case. So we've got our paper that coordinates, we've got our stapler, we've got our straight edge, we've got our cutter, and you can use big or little cutter. I just happen to prefer the little teeny cutter. And then probably a place to place all your little paper cutters or paper cut paper as you've put it together. So in this case, because I want to use my smaller paper cutter, I'm going to trim off the edge of my paper, and I can save this to use for later, but then I have a size that is so workable for my little paper cutter, and actually I've trimmed this also to about 9 inches. So 9 inches seems to be a good size to make the ring. It's a little bigger than you might think. You can always overlap it or trim it as well. So then my next step is to put it in my little cutter, and I line it up and just do a nice little zip straight, and I've got the perfect size to make my chain. Now this paper is kind of great because it's printed on both sides, but most of your craft paper probably won't be printed on both sides. And so what I've done for all of my for this in particular is to do something, is to put two together. And the reason that I did that, two different strips together, is because when I did my initial prototype, oh, here he is. He didn't look very finished with the underside not having a print, and it was white, and it just looked a little unprofessional for our craft. And so I tried again and then decided that it was much more interesting and much more decorative and much more bespoke, shall we say, when I did a liner for the chain. So I guess it's double the work, but I feel like it looks so much better. So then we start with our two pieces, put them together, and then I line it up so it looks nice on the inside. And then there are other ways to put these together. If you really wanted to be fancy, you could use a paper craft glue. In our case, I wanted it to be a little bit faster. I felt like you really didn't notice the staple, and so it made a simple little chain, part of the chain. And then I think it's easiest, and you can decide what works best for you, but I think it's easiest to do all of my cuts first. I get quite a few cuts out of the paper, and then I pile all of them together in a box, and then that way I can make sure as I'm putting them together that I've got things that kind of coordinate or accent, and then I also can make sure that I've got glitter in spots and other textures and colors so that it looks the prettiest as we're fabricating it. So very simple craft. You can make this as long as you want. And I made quite a long one, so it would go all across my cabana. And if I was really industrious and having a super fancy party, I would probably make even more chains because I just think it's such a fun touch. And it's a very simple thing to do. You can do it while you're watching TV. You can do it while you're watching a movie or another Homeworthy episode. But it's something super fun to do, easy. Your kids can help do it. Grandkids can help do it. And you end up with something that, is elevated, more elevated if you use glitter paper, maybe less if you're using construction paper. But that's how simple it is, but really, really super fun, lovely craft. So for our next craft, we're going to talk about making the ribbon chandelier that we made in our girls' party cabana. So in this case, just to make it a little bit easier and to be able to show you a variation, I've started with a much smaller metal frame. So you could do this from your own chandelier, or you could buy the metal framework for a chandelier at any sort of craft store. You can buy sort of a big round wreath form, and you could use a lot of different, doesn't have to be metal, it could be a lot of different types of things. And ours was actually a little metal chandelier that holds little candles that are either real or faux. But for any other party situation, obviously you could just use the metal framework. So I'm starting today with a mini. This, obviously you need something bigger than this, but this will at least give you the idea of how to do what we did, and then of course you can make your own variation. So obviously you need the form, but then beyond that, I've used a lot of different types of material on my particular chandelier, and I used everything from crepe paper, because it just has a fun texture and it flows in the wind. It's kind of lovely. And tissue paper, and then lots of different colors of ribbon. And of course, I used a ribbon that coordinated with my lovely Halloween print. So in this case, we wanted our colors to all coordinate with our fun Halloween print, but to be extra festive. So we're going to choose ribbon colors or crepe paper or whatever sort of fun, glittery type of ribbon that you have, and use this for the basis of our chandelier. And you can get creative and use anything that you want. Another tip that I have is that over the year, for especially at Christmas, but also other family events where we have gifts, I actually save all my ribbon, and then I keep them in a basket so that I can reuse them, repurpose them. This is sort of my form of recycling. Anyway, so you can repurpose them and then they would be perfect to use for this craft. And then one other tip is that when you're storing your ribbon, you can see I've got a lot of things that are just thrown in here. And then sometimes you have to iron it to use it again. So if you want to avoid that, all you do is when you're saving it is you just take it and roll it up. And then when you store it, you can even store it by color in a plastic bag. Makes it super simple to find what you need if you want to reuse it in another way for another craft. And then it's also not wrinkled. So that kind of one little tip works super great for, and obviously recycling for a situation like this. So we're going to take our ribbon, whether it's recycled, new, whatever, and we're going to cut it in, depending on your height of your ceiling and where you're hanging it from. For me, I cut it at about 36 inches, a yard. Worked really great in my situation. You may need to make it a little bit shorter depending on the height of where you hang your metal or your structure. So once I had my structure hung up, and this could even be hung up with ribbon or wire, or like I said, on an existing element, I basically I divided it in half, folded it in half, and then ran it through my rung, and then looped it through. And by doing this, just making a little simple knot, then I didn't have to tie two different pieces. I didn't have to have an existing knot. It just made it very simple, very fast to string on. So this is what I did all around. It was very fast and actually very simple. This is, again, something that you could do at night while you're watching TV. Cut your ribbon and then just tie it on. And it's probably easiest to tie on when you haven't hung it up. Because our chandelier was already hung, we had to stand over the chandelier and tie it on, which again was super fast and easy. But it'd be even easier if you did it probably before you hung it up. So once we did that, we covered our surface with our different types of ribbon and colors of ribbon. Then we also put butterflies on. And I found these great little paper craft butterflies that were glittered and super simple. And I used a lot of these, and I felt like they looked a little more Halloweenish when they were totally black. But you can also use other butterflies, and these are available just in these little boxes at most craft stores. Sometimes they're strung together, sometimes they're just individual, and you can take them apart, you could use them, loop them through together. I also used wall stickers and then put them on a coordinating paper on the back so that when you saw them from the back, you had some fun pattern that also coordinated with the space. So just different sizes is kind of fun in whatever colors you're using. And so then again, to make this really simple, I just took my form, and once it was hung up, and this I did once it was hanging, and again, you could use a craft glue or hot glue or something, but again, to make it fast and easy, I just walked around and stapled them on where I wanted. And so I ended up with, and it's more noticeable on this black one in this light, but when it was hanging up, it really wasn't very noticeable. And then with these guys, I was able to sort of loop them through if they were actually a garland. So this might be an easier way for you, or when it also comes on a clear base, it's pretty easy to staple on. So there's a lot of different ways you could do this. Obviously, I use butterflies. I seem to like butterflies, but you could do other things. You could do polka dots, but that sort of gives you the idea of how this all came together. It's very simple, it's very fast, and it just adds a lot of spunk and party fun to your party. So now I'm going to show you how to make our spooky moth chandelier. So we were fortunate to be able to start with the existing chandelier that we wanted to add our decoration to. But if you don't already have a chandelier, you can use a metal form, and these are available. This is a mini wreath form available at any craft store. You could use a much larger form and hang it with ribbon or chain or whatever you wanted over your table in a larger size. But for the purpose of showing you how I did this and how this was constructed, I'm going to use this as my mini prototype. So all we need for this craft, and it was very, very simple and very fast, is Spanish moss or faux Spanish moss, some ribbon, and we used black ribbon, and we used these fun little ornaments that are actually meant to hang probably on a tree. And these are from Bethany Lowe, and they're just fun little Halloween moths. So we've used them in an unusual way, but we think it added a lot of fun and drama to our space. So the other things that you'll need are scissors. You might want tape, and you might want wire, and you might want some wire cutters, just depending on how it'll work best to put your chandelier together. And in our case, we also use some spray paint. So I initially started making my wreath with Spanish moss that I bought online. It's black, it comes apart, and I thought, oh, this will work great as I put it on top of my chandelier. And it does actually work great. It kind of stays in place, but as you can see, it makes a giant mess. So I was getting a mess all over my table, all over my house, and I just decided, and I didn't want it dropping in people's food as they had dinner. So I think that's certainly one way to do it. Maybe not if you're hanging it over food. And so I went to plan B, and that was to order a bunch of green hanging moss online. This was a simple online order, and then I actually took it apart and spray painted it with a black spray paint because it was green. And that's all I could find was the green, but it comes in bunches. It's very inexpensive, and I found this to be a much better method. And you can see in our video, in our chandelier, that we kind of could get it to drape down and hang nicely, and you could do it as full as you want and as long as you want. So you could create something very, very spooky or very creepy if that's what you want. But so all we did was take this faux Spanish moss, and we started to weave it around our existing chandelier, and then let parts hang down. And this is cut in a very sort of reasonable size. It actually comes a little bit longer. But so once we kind of wove it around, and you could do a lot of different types of things with that. It might just weave around yours and then pull it down, and you could make it long. And then we actually trimmed ours because we thought it might get too close to the candles on the table below. So if you're doing this method, you probably could just wrap it several times and hang it down. On ours, we actually needed to use tape and to tape it on the top of it where you couldn't see it, because we had a solid bottom to our chandelier. And just really heavy duty black masking tape would work great. You could even use packing tape. We used it in small pieces that you couldn't see from below. So once you've got this all around your form hanging down, then we cut our ribbon at probably about 36 inches again. And we, on the ground, before we hung it up, we actually looped around and flattened our little ornament wire, and then tied it in a knot so that he was actually knotted on the bottom. And we just kind of did a simple little knot, and then left the string hanging. You could cut it if you don't like that. We thought it just added a little whimsy and fun to it. And then we hung this, we tied this on we tied our little guys on in varying lengths. And it just is one little tie on the top. We didn't knot it. We just tied it. We just looped it through. And we didn't want to make it too difficult to climb up and get down and try to undo our knots. So it was pretty simple ties. They don't have to last forever. These are probably just for your holiday event. But it ended up making a very fun and kind of spooky and festive and different decoration, and really quite inexpensive and quite doable, and super spooky. So you might have noticed on our Halloween walkthrough that I like to do candy jars for the season. And so this is just such a simple thing that you can do, and anyone can do it, is take just basically your basic canisters. Maybe these are things that you store flour and sugar in, or you have for cookies. So I take a basic canister. This one is made from Etu. They make really fun kind of modern canisters. And normally I would have other pastas or things in them, but for the holidays, I fill them with candy. And then to make them feel super special, I also will tie on some sort of fun ribbon, and then some little holiday type ornament. And all I've done with this that changes its look and makes it look so holiday and funnish and special is I've taken, this is literally just a little card. And I think this is made by Mary, but like I said, you could use any kind of little ornament. Just look around and see when you find something fun. This is what I do. When I find something that I think amuses me, I usually think of some other way to use it. And in this case, all I've done is take my little card. I just stick him in here. He's got a little string so that you could actually hang him on a tree if you'd like. And then I put a little ribbon on top, and I just get my little guy hanging from the side. And so this could be done with a lot of different things. This is just a paper craft. You could do it with an ornament. You could even put little spiders on top of your jar. Just little teeny things that take minutes to do and make everything feel so much more fun and festive. Thanks for visiting Homeworthy, and I hope to see you on the next holiday.